Namaste. Welcome to this Yin Yoga practice for the heart. And I've been trying to record this session for, this is my 4th attempt. So today I'm going to demonstrate how to get into the postures and how to set them up. And then when you use the video, just pause, do your posture, hold it for as long as feels comfortable for you, and you will have a nice full practice, fingers crossed. So the heart chakra is in the center of the chest. It's the green one on the meditating person here. In our practice of yoga, we're often trying to soften this space at the front of the body where we sit. Our posture is often forward folding. So we're trying to soften and open here at the front of the body whilst supporting the space in the back of the body between the shoulder blades, the back of the heart, and strengthening that through physical sort of movements. But in Yin Yoga, we mostly support that to open the front. So I've got some equipment, as you can see today. I've got 3 blocks actually, because I might need them, but 2 should be sufficient. A little eye pillow for the restorative practice at the end, a blanket for the restorative practice at the end, 2 large pillows or cushions, and a bolster. So if you don't have some of this equipment, I will hopefully give you options that you can do something else with. But if you have these things to hand, make sure that you've got them all close-ish by to your mat to use for this practice. I'm going to pop away some of the things that we don't need immediately, and then we'll get started. So for the first practice, we're going to do a supported fish pose, a Yin Fish. So I'm going to take these 2 blocks and set up one upright underneath my head and one along the length of my spine, about between the shoulder blades. And a poncho like I'm wearing today is the perfect thing for Yin Yoga because you get quite cool sometimes, so it can keep you a little bit warmer, but do make sure you've got a nice warm room to practice in as well. So for our supported Yin Fish, just holding that block that goes behind you as you lie down and taking a moment to make sure that the block underneath the back of your head is centered and that you're not it's not tipping, so it feels quite secure. And this pose isn't supposed to be super comfortable, so it's okay for it to feel a little bit awkward. But in Yin Yoga, no pain or no increased discomfort. So here, allowing the sides of the body to relax, the backs of the arms and hands to rest on the floor. Take a moment with your knees bent and your feet on the floor to find the spot that really feels comfortable. And you might need to move that block that's between the shoulder blades, maybe a centimetre or an inch up or down to find the sweet spot. If it feels too open, it feels really awkward or really uncomfortable, then you can try this same posture over a rolled up blanket down the length of your spine. That will offer the same similar sort of support, but without it being quite as intense. If this feels relatively comfortable, you might try extending your legs so that they're long. But if it doesn't feel comfortable or so comfortable with the knees bent, then it might just feel a little less comfortable with the legs extended. Try, have an experiment. When you get into the posture of your choice, closing your eyes, bringing your body to stillness, feeling that support behind the heart, that space over the center of the chest. soften as much effort as you can from the whole body, from the legs and arms, from the face, the chest, the shoulders. And breathe deeply into that space across the center of the body, the center of the chest rather, across the heart. You can hold this for anything up to 5 minutes, but do gradually work your way up to that amount of time. Start with a minute or 2. Maybe the next time you practice 2.5 minutes, and then 3, and so on. For anyone who's feeling super comfortable with the legs extended, but you might want a little bit more openness across the upper body, you can turn the block that's underneath your head onto its medium setting, so it's about the same height as the block underneath the shoulders. And if you're practicing over a blanket, you can simply allow your head to rest onto the floor as the rest of the body is across the rolled up blanket. Just make sure that whatever you're holding is comfortable enough for you to relax, releasing effort and tension as you breathe. And then at the end of your next exhalation, just gently bringing your feet back in if they've been extended, gradually rolling gracefully to one side to dismount your blocks. You can move them out of the way, trying to move quite subtly, not making any big movements, and then lying on your back with your knees bent and just allowing your spine and your neck, which I guess is your spine too, to find its more neutral spot. Notice the effects of your practice. So what sensations are in the body? Do you feel areas of warmth or vibration of energy or coolness or tingling? Any of these sorts of things. And then when you're ready, you can roll to one side and come up into a seated position. So this is a really lovely posture to use to combat those habitual patterns we have in the body of slightly forward folding, tech neck, holding things in front of the body, you know, reading, watching TV, eating, all of these things that we do in front of the body. So one thing just to mention before we move on, if you get any tingling in your hands or numbness in your hands as you practice, then ease out of whatever you're doing and consult your yoga teacher, because that is something we want to avoid. Right, our next posture is child's pose. And child's pose isn't everyone's cup of tea. It took me years to feel comfortable in child's pose. And I was always so jealous of those people who looked comfortable in it. So you can do child's pose in a variety of ways. If you need some additional support, then you can use your bolster between your knees, and then just lengthen your body down onto it, supporting the head in a way that feels good to you. So I like to turn my head to one side. If you're doing that, do make sure that you turn your head in the other direction to balance out occasionally. And here, if your buttocks are still away from your heels, you can use perhaps a thin block, or if you had a bit more space, a higher block. Or you can use a rolled up blanket or a cushion, something that gives you that feeling of contact. So that grounding contact is part of this posture. So it's good to have it. It's not absolutely a must, but it's good to have it if you can. And if you wish to, you can take that block and put it underneath your forehead if you prefer to keep your head more centered in line with the spine. And this posture is really lovely because you get the contact of the heart at the front of the body onto the bolster, but you also get that sense of being able to really let go, turn your awareness inwards, quieten the energy across the body. If you know that child's pose is a bit more comfortable for you, then you can place these supports to one side and simply relax your forehead to the floor. There are a variety of ways to do this with the legs. You can keep the knees towards each other. You can have the knees apart and the feet together. You can relax with the arms over the head or down by the sides as you choose. Whatever position you settle on, holding for at least 5 deep breaths. And remember, you can always pause the video to hold for a little bit longer if you'd like to. At the end of your next exhalation, gently coming out of your child's pose. I hope it was okay to see that with my poncho on. I'm just loving the poncho for this practice. We will move on to our next variation, or next posture, sorry. So from here, doing a little cat-cow just to wiggle the spine a touch. So coming onto your hands and knees, and when we do yin practice, we don't want to move quickly. So we want to press into the hands to create that space underneath the body, and then really slowly moving into this forward stretching, front stretching position, and then rounding through the spine to draw the chin towards the chest, scooping the belly in. And a little bit of backwards and forwards. You can always practice any pose with a yin intention by making it slow, steady, maybe still in parts, soft, not making too much effort, more fluid than static. Sorry, it's more static than fluid, but it's more fluid when you're doing a movement like this, nice and slow. So when you've done a few rounds of cat-cow, we're going to take Anahata Asana, the heart pose. So Anahata is the name of the chakra that we're working with, and this pose, melting heart, is perfect for the heart chakra, obviously, because it's named as such. So for this, you might need a block. You can place it out in front of you. And then I like to come into this by coming forward and taking into hands and knees, and then taking the forearms to the floor. We want to then just move the knees back a touch so that the hips stay over the knees stay underneath the hips. And then you can gently lower your chest towards the floor and your forehead to your block. And you might need to give yourself a little bit more room, I think I do. And this is a great variation, particularly for those who aren't quite as comfortable in this pose, where the forearms stay on the floor, the forehead is supported by a block, and you have that space underneath the heart, moving towards the floor with the tailbone above the knees and the legs quite passive. So if this is comfortable for you, then you can go for this one. And if you would like to work a little deeper into this pose, I'm going to have to lose the poncho for this, which is such a shame. Or maybe I can just toss it to one side. Let's do that. Okay. So if you'd like to work a little deeper, you can lose the block. From hands and knees, stretch your arms forward and then slide your chest towards the floor. There are two variations, with the chin on the floor or with the forehead towards the floor. If you've got the chin on the floor, we're not holding this for a great deal of time because it's not a position that we necessarily want to hold with the neck for more than perhaps a minute. But if it's comfortable, you can hold chin on the floor pose variation. And if not, then popping the forehead to the floor and just taking a few deeper breaths here. Trying to soften as much effort as possible in the variation that you're doing. And then when you're ready to release, you can come to lie all the way flat on your tummy. Make a pillow out of your hands, resting the forehead on the back of the hands, toes towards each other and heels apart. Allow the spine to find a more neutral position. You can give yourself a little shimmer and a shake. And I'm just going to put my poncho back the way it was, keep it really nice and toasty. And then coming back to lying on the tummy. So from this position, we can take a Sphinx pose. And I should show you two different ways to do the Sphinx. So the first way is to place the elbows directly underneath your shoulders, slightly further forward if you prefer a less bendy back. Pressing the forearms and hands down into the floor and just allowing your head to find the spot that it's most comfortable at the end of the spine. So for some people, looking forward is actually quite nice, but it might take your spine out of alignment. And if you're holding your chin up a little bit, you can always try looking between your hands, and that generally will keep the back of the neck quite long and nice position to hold. You can fiddle with your legs until you find that nestling spot where we're drawing the shoulder blades a little bit back to let the rib cage nestle into the floor, the bottom of the rib cage, and the heart to be shining forward. If this feels a little bit pinchy in the low back, then press your pubic bone down, engaging the buttock muscles, and you'll find that irons out that curve a little bit so that it's a bit more comfortable. So this is option one. And again, this is quite, it's almost like an active version of the pose. So we want to hold only for about a minute. But if you would like to do a more yin version of the pose or a more restorative version of the pose, now those two things are different. Those of you who have been to classes will know. But we can do this with a bolster or a rolled up blanket or several cushions, and place the bolster underneath the arms. So the arms rest on top of it, and it's really across the front of the chest. So you have that sensation of the heart pressing against the bolster again, that space at the center of the chest. And we can even rest our chin down on the bolster, which is great because then we're not holding the head away from the force of gravity. We can surrender to it. And I quite like my arms over the top, but some people prefer their arms around the sides, and you get that, again, that sensation of contact between the front of the shoulders and the bolster as well, which is nice for the energetic lines in the arms connected to the heart. And if this feels comfortable, you can hold, closing the eyes and just breathing deeply. And whilst I might say comfortable, I just mean without increased discomfort. It might still feel a little awkward or strange. That's okay. And you can perhaps feel that this would also be a good one for the throat chakra. And then usually we start with that lower down back bend before moving into something called the seal, where we bring the bolster a bit closer towards us. You might need to lift your ribs a bit out of the way. So if you're blessed with boobs, probably want them on top of the bolster rather than underneath. So the bolster rests against the bottom of the rib cage or towards that center of the rib cage space rather than on top as it was before. And you're really letting go into the bolster. So you want to be able to surrender your weight into it and reach the hands out just a little bit, not stretch, just a little bit in front of you. And this variation of what we probably think of in classical yoga as Bhujangasana the Cobra, we call it the seal in Yin yoga. And part of that is because we don't want to associate any of the effort of doing Cobra pose with this pose. But it gives you an idea of the sort of shape your body is encouraged towards. So unlike when we do Cobra pose, when we press the tops of the feet down and really firm the bottom of the body, we don't need to do that here because we're surrendering our weight, letting go down into the floor. So if you can find a comfortable spot for your head, again, you probably don't want to be looking forward so much. It's a bit of a strain in the back there. So looking down or looking between the hands or towards the end of your mat, keeping that space long in the back of the neck. And so this is the restorative variation of the pose. And then the yin variation of the pose, you don't use the bolster for. So you hold the same position, the arms are in front of the body, and you're still surrendering your weight forward, but you're holding more with the arms. And this variation, you probably don't want to hold for more than a minute. Whereas the restorative variation, you can hold maybe for 3, up to 3. Any pose where the head is not resting on something is usually practiced a little less long. So at the end of your next exhalation, you can fold yourself all the way down to the floor. And to come into a posture of balance, we're going to slide the right knee forward and the right elbow down and leave the left forearm underneath the head as we lie on our tummies for a few deep breaths. And you can do the same thing on the other side, coming back to center first. Maybe resting the forehead on the back of the hands in a more neutral central spot. And then sliding the left knee up, the left elbow down, and resting the head on the back of the right hand or forearm for a few deep breaths. And then when you're ready, you can come back to the center. Just take a moment in this more neutral spot, just lying on the floor. Every deep breath we take has that effect of softening the front of the body,
creating openness across the chest and the upper back and under the arms.
So even if you appear to be doing nothing, you are still doing something. And then when you're ready, you can come up into kneeling or hands and knees as you choose. So throughout this practice, remembering that softness is the key to yin yoga and also restorative yoga, that sense of letting go, finding where we're holding tension in the body as we adopt a particular shape, and then softening it, letting it release from the body. And this is one of the key practices. Softness, stability, sustainability. So holding soft, surrendering down, holding in stillness, and sustaining it for a longer period of time than we often do in normal classes. So from here, we're going to come into a little malasana, garland pose. And this isn't for everybody, and it's not necessarily necessary to do it. But if you want to, you can have a block handy. I'm just going to take my feet a comfortable distance apart, bend at the knees, and bring myself into this nice squatting position. So for anyone who finds it difficult to hold, you can actually put a block underneath your buttocks. I'm not going to do that because it makes me lift too high and I can't hold it in that position. Or you can do this with like a stool or a step behind you. You can leave it out completely. You can try it on a chair, but lifting your feet up on blocks, which is quite useful. And again, because there's no support for the head here, we don't want to hold for a huge amount of time. But if you can, bringing your thumbs against the center of your chest, allowing the elbows to gently press outwards towards the inner thighs. Find that length down the back of the body. So we're not super hunched here. We're finding a little bit of gentle lift. Breathing deeply. And again, you don't have to hold it for long. And then when you're ready to release, just coming forward onto the hands to turn the feet from turning out to turning in. And then here, try not to strangle yourself with your poncho, just hanging in a standing forward bend. So that the forward bend here is with soft knees. You can hold elbow to elbow or wrist to wrist, or turn the backs of the hands to the floor. And use the weight of the arms to gently ease your body into the shape that gravity wishes you to take. Relax the back of the neck so the neck is long and the head is heavy. This is sometimes known as the dangle. And we're just holding for a few deep breaths. For anyone who's super comfortable, you can lift the soles of the feet and place the palms of the hands underneath the feet. So the chakras on the palms of the hands and the soles of the feet create an energetic connection. And you might be aware of that as you're holding. And just breathing deeply. Then when you're ready, you can release the hands from underneath the feet if they've been there, and prepare to, we could stand all the way up, but we're actually going to come into another reclining pose. So just bringing yourself down towards the mat and finding perhaps a comfortable sitting spot or kneeling spot. There are lots and lots of poses that we can do for the heart chakra, and it's difficult to put all of them into a practice. It's maybe not helpful to try to do too many at once. So I would like to not completely finished, but to make the last big pose of today, another reclining backbend. So for this, it's useful to have a block which can go underneath the end of your bolster. You can do this also with a rolled up blanket and a block underneath the head instead. So it's quite similar to what we did at the beginning of the class with the 2 blocks, but it's a slightly softer variation. So here I'm going to use my 2 pillows and my blanket and possibly my eye pillow as well, for a much more restorative variation of that supported fish pose. So let's see how we get in. So once you've lined up your support with a little bit more lift at the head end than here at the tail end, you can put the base of your back or your buttocks right up against that bolster. And the blanket really is only here for if you, I'm probably not going to use mine today, but if you needed a little bit of extra warmth. So here, you recline over your support to find if you're comfortable first before you get going, before you do any more than this. So just adjusting as needed. I like to have a lot of support in my low back. So I like the bolster to really make contact there. Some people prefer a bit more of a gap, that's okay too. And the feet are on the floor here, knees bent, arms can relax out to the sides, and there's a little more softness to doing it this way than over the blocks. And so if you want to, you can explore how it feels to have the legs extended. And if you do this variation, then you are doing a pose, like a supported fish pose. Supported fish pose, reclining fish, yin fish, these sorts of poses. If you'd like to explore just one little extra bit further, then you can take those 2 cushions either side of your body, bring your feet towards each other, the soles of the feet towards each other, and then do that same reclining but with the thighs supported or the knees supported. If your legs go all the way to the floor, there's no need to use the cushions. And then this posture is called Supta Baddha Konasana, reclining bound angle pose, or sometimes reclining butterfly. And it's a lovely one to conclude your practice on, although we will do a little release as well after this. So if you want to hold this for a little longer, you can pause the video to do so. You can take your eye pillow and just place it over your eyes. That contact across the top, the eyelids and the third eye center between the eyebrows is very nice for relaxing the eyes. Feeling the weight of the arms held by the floor, the palms open, a softness in the fingers. The effect of holding space in the hands. Feel that support in the back of the heart space between the shoulder blades. Allow the front of the shoulders, the chest to open, the sides of the body to fall towards the floor. Have that same sense of open and surrender to gravity across the pelvis, the legs, the feet. Find your deeper, more purposeful breath, but with softness, with quietness. You can hold this pose for up to 5 minutes, maybe even 10, if it really suited you. If you feel any sensation of discomfort arising from your practice, then releasing, not holding, not gripping, simply softening and surrendering into the stillness. After your next exhalation, just preparing to move for the purposes of this video anyway. If you would like to, you can remove your eye pillow. I would definitely encourage you to do that, otherwise it will fall off. And here we can help the knees towards each other by just activating the feet ever so slightly and helping one knee back to center and then the other so that the feet are on the floor. It's a good time to move the cushions out of the way now while they're easy to kick aside. And then as gently and gracefully as possible, rolling to one side and removing your support. Just again, doing it gently, but pushing it out of the way so you can roll onto your back. The spine can find a more neutral spot. And there's a sense of further letting go as you come into this position. It's called constructive rest in Yin Yoga, but it's our rebound posture for many of the practices that we do. And it allows the body to have a sense of the energy we've been working with, softening or spreading or recoiling, whatever that sensation is for you. Here we're just going to spend a moment with the arms crossed over the chest. So you can do this with both variations. So at the moment I've got my right arm on top of my left and a tiny roll of the head from one side to the other. Before changing the arms to be the opposite way around, really letting the weight of the arms be heavy across the body and a really small roll of the head or a wave of the nose even from side to side. And when you're ready, just coming back to the center. And at this point, whilst you may think that you've been doing quite a lot of relaxing, it's important to take a full Shavasana, a full relaxation pose, and just spend a few moments. In our physical practice, we move the energy very vigorously around the body. In Yin Yoga, we move it more profoundly, but with a sort of softer approach in many ways. Or quieter approach, perhaps, would be a better word. We still need the time to allow our energy that's been expanded and shifted to come back to our center. Otherwise, we will feel depleted rather than invigorated or energized or revitalized by our practice. So here, if you want to, you can place your bolster or rolled blanket underneath the backs of the knees. You can use your eye pillow again. But holding your body in that relaxation pose, softening and releasing all of the effort that you can. Maybe taking a few breaths and sighing out through the mouth. And if you do that a few times, you'll find that any residual tension left across the chest also softens.
Now I will conclude our practice here. You will probably want to stay a little longer. Thank you for joining me then. Namaste.